Awesome. Right, we will just hold off 10 seconds just while people come in. And I can already see there's quite a few on Twitter and LinkedIn, which is awesome. I'm, very excited about this one. Cool. Right, let's just get started then. So, hi, everyone. So the reason for this is I woke up this morning to just a barrage of messages, I would say. And my newsfeed was just clogged with news about Argentina electing a new president. And I'm not going to go on there and pretend that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to politics in another country, let alone my own country. I can't keep up with what is happening in the UK. So how can I keep up with what's going on in another country? I've watched a few documentaries on Argentina, and I think a lot of people within the Bitcoin space have done the same, and they keep an eye on inflation rate, but don't actually know exactly what it feels like being from Argentina or living in Argentina. And we're all about making stuff more relatable and easier to understand at the Bitcoin Collective. And this is about to get a hell of a lot easier with the launch of our new platform. So I have put the wait list in the description below for anyone that wants to check that out. But anyway, this morning I asked Fernando, who is a friend, a Bitcoiner, the director of marketing and comms at Blockstream, and he's from Argentina. I asked him if he wanted to do this, and he was well up for it. So here we are. I will get him on the stage.
Hey,
hi mate.
What's up, Jordan? Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's been quite interesting couple of hours, to say the least. Trying to keep afloat of everything that happened in Argentina after the election, keeping up with the news cycle, and also be productive at work. So it's interesting times for Argentina. I think it's a good time to sit down and kind of reflect on the last 14, 16 hours that has passed with you. So happy to be here.
Nice one. Yeah, thank you for joining us. So let's kick off. For anyone that doesn't know you, can you do just a little intro of who you are and what you do as well?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Fernando Nikolić. I am the marketing and communications director at Blockstream. Like you said, I also run media analysis site called Bitcoin Perception, where I analyze, mainstream media's coverage on Bitcoin across the biggest outlets internationally. So obviously, very excited and passionate about Bitcoin, but I'm also very curious on how people are talking about Bitcoin, how they are understanding Bitcoin, what kind of narratives exist, and try to identify and map that for other people to maybe see it more clearly without spending too much time on it. So that's me.
Nice. And what was it that you were referred to by Joe?
Was that sorry?
What were you referred to by Joe Hall again? Or was it that media? The media guy?
Yeah. The guy who analyzes Bitcoin across the mainstream media. He forgot to say my name. I think it was in the Bitcoin BTC Amsterdam a couple of months ago. He was struggling to remember my name, so I was like, "Hey, man, that's a good quote to put in my bio." And also, by the way, if I assume there's a lot of Bitcoiners here today, but if you don't know Blockstream, it's a Bitcoin infrastructure company founded in 2014 by Adam Back. So you might know Adam Back. He created the Hashcash algorithm to prevent email spam back in the 90s. That algorithm got included into the proof of work algorithm that is being used in Bitcoin mining by Satoshi. And Adam was one of the few ones that the first ones who communicated with Satoshi over email. So Blockstream has been an important entity in the Bitcoin space for a long time. We provide many products and services. If you don't know Blockstream and you don't necessarily want to hear me talk about Blockstream, just go to blockstream.com and get familiar.
Awesome, man. Right, let's kick it off, because I started saying that it is Twitter this morning felt like everyone was just they knew everything about Argentina all of a sudden, and yeah, Twitter kind of just turned into a frenzy of experts on Argentina just because one person happens to like Bitcoin or the values of Bitcoin. Yeah, so you're from Argentina. Can you explain how long did you live there, and where do you live now, if you want to release that?
Yeah, so Argentina and Milei right now is the current thing, right? So
Yeah.
as with any current thing, there's a lot of experts popping out of nowhere that has a very strong opinion on whether something is good or bad and what side you should take. So it's highly regarded conversations happening, and kind of like I put that in the same bucket as all the other recent current things that we have been through collectively. I am from Argentina. I was born there. I was raised in Argentina and in Norway. So I spent my childhood between Argentina and Norway. And the reason why is because my mom emigrated Argentina when I was a kid in the late 80s, in 1989, because of hyperinflation. So as a kid, going back and forth and obviously seeing the vast differences between Norway and Argentina, how both countries were run and how the government was doing things, I always started to ask myself, why are these disparate differences happening between these two countries? And I started learning about why hyperinflation does so much damage, how it kind of destroys the social fabric of society, apart from financially ruining people. But as time passed and I grew up, I just kept seeing the same people escaping or emigrating from Argentina for the exact same reason my mom did back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I was like, what the hell is going on? Why is this such a brain drain from Argentina for the exact same reason? So obviously that led me into Bitcoin and just having a more clear understanding of how Argentina has been run also before the 80s. Where have we come from, and kind of where we're going to go in the future has always been on my mind. And I think today or yesterday, after Milei's election win, kind of marks a new era, a new epoch. Super excited to talk about. And where I live today, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to disclose that, if that's okay.
No worries, man.
Yeah.
Is it a common, as I said, I don't know a lot about this subject, so it's quite good for me learning, and then also the audience learning from this. So is this a common trend that people within Argentina will emigrate out and escape the inflation?
Right. Yeah. So a lot of the reactions to Milei's victory in mainstream media today has been a lot about hope. I've seen the word hope be used a lot. And the reason why a lot of people immigrated all this time is because they were without it, straight up. It comes to a point where things are so hopeless in your country, you just start to think, hey, I'm just going to go where I'm treated better than this. If politicians and bureaucrats and these parasites are just going to be on top of my neck day in and day out through restrictive measures, whether it be capital controls, so they restrict how much money you can save in, let's say, a stronger currency like the US dollar, or restrictive things like crazy taxes in order, or crazy things like having to have 25 different licenses just to run a simple shop, and so on and so forth, right? It has become a business model ever since, I would say, Perón and Evita came to power in Argentina. So for those people who may not know those two names, Perón was a straight up fascist military general who were inspired by Mussolini and Franco and stuff like that, who took a lot of the ideas in terms of not ideology, but in terms of like how to run a country totally governed by the state without necessarily calling it communism. It was more of a government-controlled entity, business entity. So as a result of that, everybody needed to be employed by the state. Everything had to be done through states, and the more bureaucrats and more like public employees you had, and the more the state grew, then that's how you assert power without necessarily calling it or being labeled as a communist. But it's very authoritarian, very totalitarian. And he did that using ideologies from the left. So all of these things, the excuse, let's say, for growing the state bigger and bigger and bigger, was under the guise of like, hey, you need the state to be safe, you need the state to provide for you, because if not, if you don't have a estado presente, or like a present state, like they call it, you have no recourse. So it started back in the 40s and the 50s with that type of ideology, that type of indoctrination in public schools, thinking, you need public schools, you need public health there. Everything has to be public and run by the government for things to be there for you, just to even exist. And that has kind of like morphed into this like Latin American far left ideology that you see in Cuba, that you see in Venezuela, that you see now in Brazil. But there's been waves, throughout history during the Cold War. In Argentina, as a result of just staying in that lane decades and decades and decades throughout, just ended up in ruins at this point, to the point where hyperinflation is a thing that is normalized, that people just like, hey, that's kind of like how it works, so let's work around that, right? But a lot of people are saying, stop it. This is not a way to live. And especially now with the use of internet, a lot of young people are starting to see how people are living in Australia, in Europe, in the States, whatever, you name the country that's better than Argentina, and they will see it on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. So people are like starting to realize like something is terribly wrong here. And then when Milei comes into place and says a lot of these things that are anti these policies, and he is able to present it in such a clear and concise way, young people, they put two and two together and they're like, no, it has to stop. This is straight up BS. And I think that gave Milei a momentum for eventually winning the election. But yeah, so that's the TLDR. I'm happy to go more into detail on these things, but to avoid this becoming a rant, I'm just gonna pause here and we can take it piece by piece.
Yeah, we'll pick up on because I want to come back to that. I've got a few questions around how you thought he won, but just going back to like the difference, to make it a little bit more relatable to people, the difference between living in an economy, just say as the UK or the US, and comparing that to living in Argentina. Because I pulled up the October inflation rate, and in Argentina it was 142.7, and the US, for example, was 3.2. It's a massive difference. I don't think I can't comprehend what life would be like living in that sort of environment. Do you think people or have people just got used to living in that, and now maybe they're realizing like this isn't the norm?
Yeah, I think Argentinians are a special breed of people. Okay, let me say that first, because it makes a lot of sense to like whether or not you would think people are accepting the status quo or not. The truth is they don't. But Argentinians, are incredibly thrifty people. They're entrepreneurial, they're autonomous, they're builders, and that comes from the turn of the last century, where there was a lot of European immigrants that came to Buenos Aires to straight up build a country. Right, is the same influx of immigrants that New York saw from Europe, that with people that came to like build a country. The exact same thing happened at the same time in Buenos Aires as well as New York. Now, we all know how prosperous the US became because of that wave of immigration. Argentina, the same. So you could look at any, like, the GDP per capita rate from Argentina at that time. So we're talking late 1800s, early 1900s. We were top 10 in the world, better than Australia, New Zealand, all these other countries, Canada, that today are at least better than Argentina. They have their own problems, but they're better than Argentina. But that kind of like that entrepreneurial spirit, that obviously comes from having enough freedoms and no state in your business, letting you actually build what you want to build, see a need and create a product or service for that need, and provide for your family through providing through others. That became part of the DNA in Argentina, and as a result of that, I would say Argentina has excelled in a lot of different things: sports, film, music, you name it. There's many fields, tech as well. So that has never gone away, but it has been diminished over time, because if you impoverish your people more and more, and you kind of like you take them down the quicksand, more and more people goes into that quicksand. You put them in a situation where they do feel desperate and they do look out for handouts because they have, I don't know, they're paralyzed in a way. So that is kind of like the 50% of the people that today live under the poverty line. They do so because that's what the state wants, because that's the business model. You impoverish enough people, they become dependent on the state. You remain in power because you can get votes if you promise them free stuff. But the remaining people who have honestly fought tooth and nail to remain somewhat middle class, they have always figured out a way to kind of like circumvent the system, do a lot of improvised activities, let's say. So that is, they do business outside of the system. They do stuff without really paying taxes. They just do tax evasion at highly, creative ways. A lot of times with people that are in the government, because corruption is a thing. So it becomes the thing where if you want to survive in Argentina, you need to know the right people, and they want to do favors for you. You do favors for them, go back and forth, and that's how you kind of like can maintain. If you're not a person like that, and this is not for everyone, the other choice is I'm getting out of here, right? I'm going to a country that is functioning, that is stable, that works, where I can just have a day job and don't worry about having food or being able to pay all the monthly costs. The majority of people just want a simple life. They don't want to have to. It's kind of like what we're saying in Bitcoin. You don't want to force people to be a trader in order to protect your wealth or avoid inflation. A lot of people are forced into trading and doing a lot of things that they don't understand. They get wrecked in the process because they feel that they're forced to, because there is no other alternative. So that's kind of like how Argentina is. By no means are people accepting the fact that it is the way it is. They circumvent it. The ones who don't have the means to circumvent it, who don't have the connections, who don't have the capital to be part of the corruption, they leave. But I think now with Milei and these ideas of freedom, liberty, protection of private property, open commerce, all these Austrian things, Milei cracked the code. And instead of sounding like too academic, talking about like, oh, you need to read Human Action from Mises, and oh, you got to check out Rothbard's books, he made it so that it's easy, short, precise, perfect for going viral on social media in few clips. And then his delivery, aggressive, passionate, like I'm fed up as much as you are fed up too. So you manage to connect those things, and then a lot of people are fed up. They don't accept the thing. They have been forced to live with hyperinflation for many decades, but they don't want to continue, and they saw the opportunity to stop that with Milei.
So how big of an upset was this? Because he won by 56%, I think it was, to 44.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an upset was this? Was this predicted? Like, what did you think? Did you think this was going to happen, or were you just hoping?
You kind of like mentally prepare for the worst sometimes, because you kind of like, especially in a place like Argentina, how corrupt and how huge the government is. So they have all the resources to go against somebody like Milei. It's not only access to the money printer to pay for publicity or propaganda, but there's also more like putting into motion public schools, people, all these people that are part of the big government, all the institutions, and all the networking that happens between all these public institutions, right? Public transportation, all of that. They really set into motion a crazy campaign where you literally entered a bus or a subway, and when you pass your card to pay for the fare, in the screen it says, this is how much you're paying now with the current government. This is how much you're going to pay if Milei wins. So you saw that right in front of you, right?
Wow.
That's just one. That's maybe the most famous example of the many things that they did. But you get an idea, right? Like how insanely corrupt and illegal these things are. But since they own everything, they do illegal things without caring, because nobody's going to go to jail. So I saw those things and I thought to myself, a lot of people will believe these things, because there's a lot of people who are very poor. 50% of Argentinians live under the poverty line. Be mindful of that. And 10% literally are destitute. Like they don't know where they're going to eat. They don't know where they're going to have the next meal. That's 10% of a nation of 47 millions. They live like that every day. They don't have a house. They don't have food on the table. And then 50% of the 47 lives under the poverty line, barely making it through. So if you then go and say, hey, if Milei wins, everything goes up in price, they're going to be like, yeah, man, I know how much I have every month with the current government. I know how far I can stretch that. If you're telling me that things are going to go up, 600%, like what kind of emotion will that trigger? So I was very afraid that a lot of people would be fearful and vote for the status quo, because, hey, it's bad, but it's not as bad as this possibility, as this alternative that they're presenting to me. Luckily, and this is one thing that I started to get a feeling of, like when Milei and Massa, the other candidate, when they were out doing public appearances and stuff like that, when Milei goes out, he can barely walk. Everybody's behind Milei. Everybody. He is loved by the people. You can feel it. And when Massa goes, it's all like a setup. It's all fake. It's all like they literally pay people to participate in these things. That's another tactic that the government, the Peronist government, has been doing a lot. They, if you're not their friend and they want to make your life impossible, they'll organize a strike, and then they pay people to go and protest in the streets. These are the same people who are dependent on these like social plans, these subsidies. So they basically say, you're going to lose your subsidy if you don't appear today at this plaza where we're going to march for whatever thing. And then they get paid on the day cash. So, we're dealing with like a Hydra beast, a beast of several heads, and you cut down one head and then two new heads grow. And I was afraid that government would be so, like, the tentacles would be so vast and touching absolutely everything that Milei wouldn't make it. But the results yesterday tells otherwise. People were not afraid. They stood up. They believed in Milei. They wanted that change so bad that they're willing to take the risk. But it's not really a risk because it's a lot of fear mongering. It's like they don't know what they're talking about, so that's not going to be the reality. But still, they went against that, and I think so. I'm very proud as an Argentinian to see, my countrymen stand up like that and democratically elect Milei, because for a moment there, you kind of like thought, hey, these people who got booted yesterday, they've been in power since 2003. So you're starting to think like this is becoming like a Maduro Chavez thing, where you vote democratically one guy, and then once that guy is in, it's game over for the country, right? So at least we're not Venezuela yet. We put that on pause, and let's see what Milei can do the next 4 years. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to say, is the level of how fed up people are to ignore propaganda, like what you were saying. That must be insanely high, because if you're seeing that every day, if you're going to work and going around the city, it must be hard to ignore and not subconsciously go into your brain. And yeah, so it just shows how fed up people are.
Yeah, and there's a
And
good thing
then
about yeah. Sorry, go
on
ahead.
you, I was going to say, this is a good transition, is you tweeted about it's a culture change for Argentina. What exactly did you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. It's not a culture change yet. It's more of a narrative change. But I think in a cultural change, you need to start with a narrative and have people believe in certain narratives, and then you kind of like have to repeat that a lot to get more people on board. And that's kind of like what has happened now. And the first call to action was vote for Milei, right? But this has been kind of like a thing that was in the making for the last 5-6 years. Like you can literally start when Milei started to get like viral, like internet famous, which was like 5-6 years ago. So like I said, with the delivery, with the arguments, with the very simple rhetoric of very complicated stuff like Austrian economics and Rothbardian money philosophy, he managed to do that, right? So he got the attention, he got the following, and then he started blending in that into a more political discourse, which eventually gave him the victory yesterday. So the narrative has changed. It's kind of like the Overton window has moved a little bit, but it's too early at this point to say that this is a cultural change. In my tweets, I was talking about like the cultural battle. Like this was a win for the cultural battle that we need to do. And I don't think it's necessarily a Argentinian cultural battle that we need to do neither. I mean, we are in a very special time in the world. And I think this cultural battle is a global thing. And I think Milei hopefully can inspire other people elsewhere to, talk like that and convince more people about the notions of, defending private property and having the freedom. But anyway, so I hope that this can trigger the cultural change, which the next steps I think is continuing the narrative and having more people believe in that. But then also when Milei is actually in power, that he can actually make some good things happen. Some good things happen that people feel, so they can say, hey, it's a good precedent that we have. So it's not all talk and all argument, because then you're just a normal politician. You're just talking and not doing anything. So he needs to really take a look at like, okay, what are the low-hanging fruits, stuff that I can get done in the next 4 years? And then hopefully if he wins the re-election, okay, a more like midterm plan for the next 8 years and actually see it through. And he doesn't have that much support in the Senate and all these like places where he needs to eventually negotiate and come to terms with these things. And the system is built for compromising. So there's a lot of things that he has said is probably not going to be able to do because of the system is structured in a way that forces you to compromise with people who are not part of your party or whatever. So I hope he can pick these things that are like low-hanging fruits, easy to execute, but has is felt by the people. And if that happens, people are just going to put two and two together and say, the argument sounds nice, and the actual results of that is even nicer. So then they become more convinced about these arguments, and they take it as more than theory, but actually something like, hey, this works. Let's do this. Let's re-elect this guy, and then somebody else can come and kind of like be a Milei guy who talks the same thing, and then people are already convinced because they had 8 good years, and we can really put into place this project that can really drive change. Because even Milei himself said, if we want to be like Mexico, we need 15 years. If we want to be like Italy or Spain, we need 25 years. And if we want to be like Germany or France, we need maybe 50, 60 years. So this is not like a magic wizard who's going to just move his wand around and change everything for the better. He needs to kind of like do it piece by piece and convince people in the long term. So this is hopefully the start of that.
Yeah, that's what I liked, is that he seems to have a low time preference, and he's planning stuff out for the long term. And yeah, when you're talking about it on Twitter and on here as well, I like that it's not, because what I've seen on Twitter, on Bitcoin Twitter a lot, is like, this is it. This is the moment, and everything's going to change from now on. Whereas it's not really like that. It's just like, this is the spark that could cause change. I think that's important to remember, because it is going to be an uphill battle, right? If he doesn't have the support of, is it the Senate you said? It's going to be tricky, I imagine, anyway.
Yeah, no, the Senate is one thing. Then you have the syndicates. Then you have all these powerful businessmen who have been enjoying many years of free money from the other governments. And then Milei comes and is like, you're not getting that anymore. You're going to cut down these spending. We're going to like remove these plans. He's going to get pushback, definitely. But it's up to him to be able to figure it out. That's the job, right? That's his job as president for the next 4 years, to figure out a way, give them something, get something back, come with some peaceful compromise that is in line with his, like you said, long-term plan. But let's see what happens. I think Bitcoiners are luckily not we have reached at a point in global Bitcoin adoption that being a Bitcoiner, or just like liking Bitcoin and kind of like believing in Bitcoin, doesn't necessarily mean you have to like subscribe to like these things. You that was maybe the case 1 cycle ago, maybe 2 cycles ago, but I'm definitely seeing that now, that you are seeing many Bitcoiners from many different creeds, from different places around the world, and their experiences are very different. So I definitely see a big difference between Bitcoiners who are from the West, who have opinion that you can tell is very biased already, because I believe it's a survivorship bias. So they have kind of like gotten to this point. They came in Bitcoin at a good point. Things have gone well for them. So they're completely convinced that my way of thinking, my opinion, is what led me to this position that I am comfortable in. And therefore, Argentina, Nigeria, El Salvador, they have to believe in these things the same way that I do for it to be successful. So when they see Bitcoin as a legal tender, they might get happy about it. And then they get all of a sudden surprised that maybe adoption in El Salvador is not as huge as they thought they were, because they thought that this was a good thing necessarily. I hope I'm making sense. I'm just trying to give an example of how a lot of people in the West, Bitcoiners included, are seeing life through their filter. And that's actually fine. I mean, we're humans here. There's so much information, there's so much stuff going on every single day. We need to kind of create this lens for us to see the world in a way that lets us understand it, like understand something simple in a very chaotic world. We need that, and that is fine. But luckily, there's a lot of Bitcoiners who are based in Argentina, or Argentina like me, who have kind of like, my family went in exile, who sees stuff differently and can say, hey, Milei has talked positively about Bitcoin, that's fine, but we know that doesn't necessarily mean Argentina is going to follow El Salvador and become the second country to legalize to make a Bitcoin legal tender. It's not about that. There's so many other things before Bitcoin becomes relevant that needs to get fixed. Yeah, Milei has said some cool things about Bitcoin. He likes it. He's an Austrian, right? So he understands the concept. So when he's asked the question about it on TV, he's going to say something positive about it. But that's it. Like, slow down. Like, there's so many things that needs to get fixed. So much structural change, foundational change that Argentina needs to go through before they can get to that part where they're privileged enough to think about stuff like Bitcoin and other things. We need to fix hunger. We need to fix poverty. We need to fix the violence, so that people can go to work and not be afraid of like getting robbed on the streets, or people can live, have a standard of life where they know at least when the next meal is going to come. Bitcoin is absolutely irrelevant until these things are fixed. So, I love the enthusiasm, but we're far away. I don't think Bitcoin is in Milei's radar right now, at least.
I think that is such an important point, and this is one that I've seen Peter McCormack getting stick for when he done his documentary in Argentina, and he's mentioned it a few times. It's like Bitcoin isn't needed there right now. Like that's people are they want dollars. But they're using some other stable coin, and what's needed is stability. And Bitcoin can't really give you that in the short term, because it's so volatile. So you see the next step as like dollarizing first, and then having, if they get to that point, like Bitcoin as the store of value, the savings account, whatever you want to call it. Is that what you kind of see the next steps as being?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I love the documentary that Peter did, by the way, and I do love the fact that he's I hate the word brave because it's like so much misuse, but he got a good pair of cojones to actually go out and say, you know what, this is how I feel, this is what I see. I mean, it's right in front of me. What do you want me to say? You don't like stable coins on Tron. I get it, but the fact is, people are using it, and it's for a very important thing, like having some stability in their life. So I think that stablecoin usage and Bitcoin usage obviously has gained some adoption in Argentina way before now. Like I said before, there's a subset of Argentinians who are extremely thrifty, who are looking for opportunities everywhere to do business or to just stay where they are comfortably in the middle class or upper middle class, whatever you want to call it. When stable coins and Bitcoin got introduced, they got picked up like this. There's certain people, certain countries, citizens of certain countries who are very good at like spotting these opportunities because they know that they can't trust the governments. Argentina, Nigeria, I would say fall into these categories. Nigerians are like insanely entrepreneurial, and they're all about the hustle, all about the culture. I mean, sorry, the hustle. And so they look at Bitcoin and they get it. But what happens in Argentina is, in order for you to get it, you need to have some sort of education, or you need to mentally be at a place where you can understand a concept like Bitcoin fast enough for you to start using it. For a lot of people, usually it takes a lot of time to actually grok Bitcoin from the first touch point, right? Imagine in Argentina where like education is shit and like it's tough. So the few that has that like opportunity, they use it for what it's worth, and they look at which chain is the cheapest. Let me get Tether on that. The important part about the dollarization is that other people besides these people that are poor, that live in the ghettos, that don't know how to eat, that they get access and exposure to these dollars. Like, for example, if you do, like, I don't know, you go around on the streets and you collect cans and you want to sell the metal. The fact that you can sell that metal and get dollars back, that is just a upgrade on your life, because before you got paid in Argentinian peso for that, you need to spend it immediately because next week is going to be devalued. If you can get US dollars for any kind of job, whether it is taxed or not, white or black or whatever, the fact that you got a stronger currency that doesn't devalue as fast, because let's be clear, obviously the US dollar devalues. It's a fiat, it's a shit coin, right? But the fact that they have time, the ice cube melts slower. Hey, that actually has the potential for you to recalibrate your mind and say, I can sit on these dollars for a while and I can maybe accumulate a couple of dollars and then use the bigger chunk of dollars now. Let's say I got 20, 30, 50, even $100 saved up. And I can spend that on a refrigerator, an oven, or whatever. That is insanely good. And there's a lot of people who don't understand that because they are in the West and they think, oh man, you're just perpetuating the hegemony of the Federal Reserve, right? Yeah, okay, that is probably true, but they don't care. It's not about that. It's about becoming prosperous without having to leave your country and your family to get a job as a dishwasher in Spain. It's about opening up a business and having a set of laws that actually incentivizes people to open up businesses and employ people, instead of what they have had for decades, where the laws that are in place, the regulations that are in place, actually taxes the shit out of you. Sorry for, excuse my French. They put in so many things in your way. Oh, you need a license for this, but you need to go there to get the stamp, and then you need to come back and show me the stamp, and then you need to go to the other office to get, and you're supposed to be working at your office or your shop, not go around and shaking hands and getting stamps from all these parasite bureaucrats. It's about that, and it's about just transferring value to each other in a currency that is not just evaporating. So I think dollarization is the next step. This is what Milei has said is kind of like one of his big promises. It's going to be hard for him to actually get the dollars to be able to circulate that in the economy. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he has some concrete ideas on how to do that, which is a little bit too technical for me to explain, but at least he has been vocal about this is how I plan to do it. So if we can get to that, hey, that's an upgrade, man. That's like getting, you play a game and then all of a sudden you get like a bonus kit of armor and equipment. It's that. It's just like instantly there's an upgrade there. So I hopefully, that happens fast. People can get started earning in dollars, and then the concept of saving becomes a concept that people understand. And then when they know what saving is, and then they come to a point where like, hey, there's something called Bitcoin, which is the most badass savings technology out there. They're going to be like, okay, at least I know the concept of saving. Please tell me how Bitcoin can be better than than the US dollars that I use right now. And that's when you enter. That's when the orange pilling happens. So I hope it happens like that. Then reality is, we'll see about that. But at least theoretically, I hope that happens that way.
That whole flow makes so much sense, the way you just laid it out there, of like teaching the population about saving. Because like I think of when I've got, let's say, a chunk of money, I think like 10 years, like what's going to happen to this money if I put it into a savings account over 10 years. Whereas you're saying in Argentina, you are literally, what's going to happen over 10 days to my money. And that's such a powerful thing of learning what savings actually is, and witnessing savings, and not learning what it is, but like witnessing what it's actually like. And then that's when the Bitcoin comes in. I love that whole bit. right, let's move on to the last bit, and then if anyone's got any questions, please put them in the comments, and I will check Twitter as well. So if you put a comment on Twitter, I will do that, or I'll check that there. But my last question to you, before we get on to that, is, so you've got Bitcoin Perceptions, which is analyzing the perception of Bitcoin in mainstream media. What's your view on the mainstream media in Western countries towards Milei? In my view, or in my just looking at, like, glancing on BBC News or seeing articles from The Guardian come up, it's very negative, like extremely negative, and the wording that's used, it's quite harsh. What's your view on that?
Yeah, you kind of like brought up the worst example with the Guardian, so I totally understand how you feel. They definitely weaponize the language that they use, and you can tell, like, just from seeing some headlines over a long enough period of time, like they're pretty much seeing Bitcoin in one way only, and that's it. So, and that is true. That is actually true, and that's fine. Uh, Unfortunately, journalism today is very different than, let's say, journalism in the 60s, 50s. That, for the most part, back then, not 100%, but for the most part, they were more like investigative. They were more independent. They actually asked hard questions, and they wanted to get like a discourse going on where many sides as possible would be part of that discourse. And today is kind of like they did a slow 180 on this, right? It's more of a monologue. There's really not a lot of different views in one piece, to the point that there are outlets that aren't really diverse in their coverage, which is sad. But as a Bitcoiner, I think you get more exposure to the bad stuff. You get, like, the things that go viral are like tweets with a screenshot of like a ridiculous headline or like a ridiculous commentary, and that kind of make the rounds. And you see that enough, and you'll end up thinking, well, to hell with the mainstream media as a whole. They have only bad things to say about us, and I love Bitcoin. I defend Bitcoin, so I'm going to be, I'm going to react. My immune system kind of like reacts against it. I understand that feeling too, but since I work at Blockstream with marketing and communication, so I deal with like creating press releases. I deal with like having Adam Back go on Bloomberg and talk and stuff like that. I look into these things, right? And I came to the point. I've been at Blockstream at like two and something years at this point. So in my work, I started seeing like there are journalists that are quote unquote good ones. Like there are journalists that are curious, that are willing to also learn, right? Like they're not experts, but they are still covering Bitcoin, but they do it in a way that is like organically curious. They don't come with like preconceived notions and like try to, you have a journalist who come and they want to do a hit piece and they come with bad intentions. Yes, you have those as well. But I saw enough of the people who are more balanced. They care about the nuance. They try to paint a picture that includes different viewpoints of the same topic. I saw that enough to be like, let me see if there's a tool or a newsletter or something that kind of like does that for me and breaks it down. And I didn't see anything existing like that. Nobody's really covering the Bitcoin perception from mainstream media apart from what you see on Twitter. So I was like, okay, to hell with it. Let me create that myself. And I started pulling in data, and I've been looking at data this year very closely, but I'm also pulling in data from 2018 that I'm still like organizing and cleaning. But what I've learned in the 2-3 months that I have created these reports, so I do a weekly report on bitcoinperception.com every Monday. I create a report about the last week, and I have some screenshots from my dashboard with some stats, and then I kind of like take you through what the main topics of last week was and how that was covered. And I started to see like, hey, there's a lot of good coverage still. There's a lot of good pieces that are about Bitcoin that is positive. And one maybe even more important thing is that there are certain outlets that understands Bitcoin in a very specific way, and they write about Bitcoin in that way. Example, the more like American right-leaning publications, the Foxes, all of that, they have been covering Bitcoin mining for the most part and its relations to the energy grid. How many old factories that can kind of like repurpose, and how many jobs that creates. And I've seen a lot of positive coverage about that topic. And that's in my mind, I'm like, obviously, as a Bitcoiner, you think, well, Bitcoin is about way more than that. You need to talk about other stuff as well. But you know what? It's actually good that they talk about this one thing, because that's their understanding, and then they keep talking about it in that way, and more people are going to come and understand Bitcoin through that angle, through that door, and that is fine. Then they can kind of like explore on their own. And then you have the Bloombergs that are like all about the price action, and that is fine too. If you understand the value of Bitcoin from like an investor perspective, you'll understand the stuff about like a supply cap, and the decentralization aspect of it, perhaps the digital gold narrative, and that's another way to understand Bitcoin as well, and that is fine. If you come through the Bitcoin door and you come through the digital gold narrative, hey man, I'm welcoming you. Then it's a rabbit hole for you to go through, but then there's many others to explore later. You need to go through the door though, and that's kind of like what is crucial about Bitcoin adoption. If you want to be serious about it, we need to simplify it, have a door open for people to walk through, and then they can take it after that. Bitcoin is like it never stops. Like you can learn about it forever. So I think that's a really good thing, and I think a lot of people should know that more within the Bitcoin community. So that's what my weekly reports are for, so that people can see like, hey, there's some good stuff, there's some bad stuff. Here is the lowdown, here's the TLDR. But it's about like finding signal in a very noisy environment, which is the mainstream media in general.
Yeah, nice. And I know we've talked about this a lot in different rabbit holes that people come down to Bitcoin from, and different angles, and simplifying it, making it relatable. So we're definitely on the same path, but just not in the media space. Like we had a call last week, and I explained, please don't say anything. I've told you more than anyone else. People will find out more if they join the waitlist.
You should.
But, it's so important that you can relate to people and meet them where they are, because it's so confusing. If you're coming in or even keeping up with Bitcoin, like it's so difficult. So yeah, we're very much aligned on that. Right, let's take the questions, because we have got 6 minutes. The first one is, has Milei, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Am I saying Milei right?
Milei is good, yeah.
Milei, yeah. Said anything during the election campaign about making Bitcoin legal tender in Argentina that you know of?
No, not in the actual campaign. In the election campaign, he has been talking about Bitcoin many times before during interviews, and I think that's kind of like where the majority of Bitcoiners, they get the reference from. During the actual election campaign, his like promises, Bitcoin was never about that. He didn't mention that in the big sense, but he has said enough about Bitcoin for us to know that he's a proponent of it, but it's not part of his program per se.
Nice. And then, this is a really interesting one. What's the current situation with Bitcoin mining in Argentina, and what is the potential? So is there a lot of renewable energy within Argentina? That's just me adding on to that question, because I'm very interested.
Yeah, no, well, renewable, I'm not sure. I think, closer to the Paraguay border, we have the Iguazu Falls, which is, crazy big source of hydropower. I think mostly Paraguay is taking advantage of that and other sources that they have, that is hydropower specifically. But in terms of just the infrastructure, I think Argentina is really set up for this. I know that there's a lot of there's some mining operations down in Patagonia, which is the southernmost part of Argentina. So it's a cool place, close to the Antarctic. So no problems with things heating up there. But I'm not sure of the energy mix that those miners in Patagonia are using. But the most important thing is that they just need to have a government that doesn't interfere, and that has not really been the case. So I know that a lot of mining operations are struggling, and they're going to Paraguay, where there's like an excess of hydropower anyway, and they just do business there. But so hopefully, with Milei, some of these restrictive laws can go down, and more people can start mining, especially down in Patagonia, and in the and near the Paraguay region.
Nice. I've got Susie saying hydro is massive within
Oh yeah,
loads in Paraguay as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've never looked into that because I've talked about this before. I'm very interested, and we're doing stuff within Scotland when it comes to Bitcoin mining, just because there's so much renewable energy there, and the grid is so far behind. It's just not built out at all. So there's so many use cases for Bitcoin, and there's so much stranded energy around which needs to be utilized. But it's just educating people about Bitcoin, and you're just putting value on stranded energy that people would waste. Like I've talked to a few people who are just earthing it, and they're getting nothing. And I'm saying you can get Bitcoin here. If you want to keep it, you can keep it, or you can sell it. Yeah, it's just the whole education piece as well. Right, I think so. That's it on here, and I think that's it on Twitter as well. So we will wrap up unless anyone's got a last ditch question. But yeah, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, luckily you have a combination of a Spanish first name and a Serbian last name. So it's pretty unique combination of a name. So you can just Google me and you'll find everything there, Fernando Nikolić. But on Twitter, I'm pretty active. It's my handle is based layer, so base layer, but a based one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Go to base layer and bitcoinperception.com, and that's all the content that I create.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on. And like, we talk a lot, and we're very much aligned within our views and our approach to Bitcoin. And I just love chatting with you. Like, I think we were supposed to have like a 30-minute call last week, and we went over an hour. It's always great. So, and I love your newsletter, Bitcoin Perceptions. So anyone's listening, sign up for that, and also sign up for our waitlist to be the first on our platform. Cool. Right.
Awesome.
I will end the live stream there, but thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone who came as well. So see you around. Thank you.